is true and it's false, with unlimited precision, proves blue and it's false, who's read by permission, gave clues to the most, used thumb to form fission, and coup against sauce, spinning true in division. What is true amidst false, with unlimited precision, proves blue and it's false, who's read by permission, gave clues to the nos, used thumb to form fission, and coup against sauce, spinning true in division.
We need legitimate leadership because we're facing a multifaceted problem, and it has the experts of 1,000 fields occupied with what they feel is the true nature of the problem we're all facing. And all of it sums up to a massive distraction. We can't all agree on the same thing about what it is we all need to do to fix our problem. One thing we can all collectively agree on, though, is that there is a problem. My spin on it is it's electrical pressure. Sure, we know what it looks like when it's in front of us. When we have to deal with social issues, when we have to deal with each other's shit. When someone's coming at us because they have an issue. With something we did, or something they've projected onto us about maybe their misunderstanding about our actions. I'm trying to speak real general here. What I'm saying is, whatever the case may be, society is extremely complicated. I mean, there's so many elements to the way we're all expected to. We all live. We all have to live. Every hour of our day is occupied with being productive in some way that builds our value in the external world. And then you have this group of people who feel like, they're turning inward for their to find their spiritual worth, rightly so. And that is the way we're all supposed to behave, but it's considering what we're facing at the moment, it's not the time. We have a very existential threat we have to deal with. And we can't all agree on how it is we're supposed to attack the problem, because we can't even agree on what it is the problem is. But what I'm trying to say is we can all sum it up by the electrical pressure that's emitted from space. You see, each of us have problems because of how complicated life is. There's something about our lives that, when we focus too much on, we lose control of other aspects of our lives. It's like a jigsaw puzzle or a Lego fortress that's constantly falling apart, that's subject to some sort of elemental turbulence. And it's your job to figure out a way to fortify your own Lego fortress against, the weather, the storm, whatever it is, whatever daily activities you have to, whatever challenges you have to overcome. You have to fortify yourself against these elemental challenges. You're subject to this elemental turbulence in the form of, just shifting matter moving around, that changes its state because it's subject to pressure, some sort of pressure. There's a pressure that's building in people. And normally things that we can overlook, we're finding we can't overlook anymore. And it's because we're being induced by this electrical pressure that's forcing us to resist in some way against what we feel is a form of power loss. We have this field we need to maintain this security field, this bubble. It's always around us that we feel we need to maintain. And we occupy ourselves with becoming strong so that we don't need to feel vulnerable. And that's because we are, oh goodness, why is this so complicated? We're demonstrating the nature of light when it is stuck in a bubble where the elements shift around. It carries heat, it moves it around, it blows it around. It changes its state from, wind condenses into, because it's a wind, it has molecules, vapor in it. It condenses, losing its heat. It turns into a liquid, and that's a motion. That's when something's in a state of flow. And then when it really loses all its heat, it crystallizes and becomes earth. But then that's when you've become too rigid and unbending, and the only thing that will move you is a compelling force, and enough force to bust rock, and change it into a magma. And that's when there's enough pressure to induce all of the elements into a state of flux. And that's what we're experiencing now. We're experiencing the bedrock of all things subject to an elemental friction, a turbulence that is shifting and breaking apart the earth element. And we can feel it in the earthquakes. We can feel it in the traditions. We can feel it in our ideology changing. We can feel it in a desperate need to fortify ourselves against anyone who has, like, we're all having a sense of this I am presence, where we all need to define reality based on our point of view, based on our perspective of it. And while there is a subjective truth to it, there is an objectivity to reality that we all need to become very much engaged with. That is, at the moment, because of nature's machine, changing pressure in the world, so that when we equalize with that pressure, we must become cold, or we must become incredibly powerful to resist the cold, which will create a greater need for the masculine force to become stronger, which will steal more from the feminine. And whether you feel like there are otherworldly beings that are forcing this change in the elements or not, what's happening is unignorable. I'm not sure if that's even a word. We can't ignore what's happening. The reality is it's just happening. It's happening whether it's because it's being induced by alien gods, or because it's being induced by the elements, the sun. It's the sun. There's a pressure that's building, and it's coming from the sun. That pressure is emitted from the sun, the source of our consciousness. And there is a wind, an electric wind that goes out, and it blasts out into the sun's magnetic field. And all the elements are subject to this increase in force. And, they've done they've observed where all of the planets now are being induced by a state of flux. They're all being changed. And what happens up there happens down here within us. So that turbulence being emitted from the sun in the form of this electric wind carries a form of pressure. And at certain periods in the great cycle, the planets lose their magnetic fields. It's just the nature of a phase wave pattern. And it's Piscean, or it's and it's at a certain angle, it's the sun's influence weakens across the galactic center. And when it weakens, it has this effect on the planets where they become vulnerable to the sun's wrath. Its natural state of being, which is aggressive. It's a lion, and it's moving through space, and it's emitting all this power, and the planets are typically protected from it. But the further we get away from the the galactic center, and not the galactic center, but the angle of it. I've covered this ad nauseum, but the point is, there's pressure is captured within our planet, and it subjects all things to a state of change. And within people, we can see this change being induced in the elements. We see it being induced. All things that represent the elements are being subject to a state of change and a state of flux. And the way that we fix that is the way that, it seems that people are terrified of discussing it. Is we just need to have the gold. It's about the gold. It's all about the gold. We mine the gold for the gods, end quote. There are all these stories about how we took that gold and we used it to become like the gods, and that was the golden age. That was when we understood the nature of magnetism. We utilized it to change the relationship between Mother Earth and the sun. We gave this planet the resonance of the sun. Why do I have to tell people I'm some messianic figure? Why do I have to try and be that? There's so much more to me, and what I have to share. But the world is in such a state of judgment that my message, I feel, needs to be so broad to cater to so many who I feel are desperately seeking aid and shelter because they sense things are getting out of hand, and the worse they get, the less protection there seems to be for people who are naturally vulnerable to changing states, to state change, and that's women and children. They're the first to experience, when things get out of hand. They're the first to feel it because they don't have typically the resources or the in many cases the confidence, and in many cases the power to feel confident in a world where there is there's the law of the jungle, where we are forced to fend for ourselves, where we're forced to barter, we're forced to live off the land, we're forced to go back to the equatorial days. That's just, I know a lot of people expect things to go that way, and because we're supposedly enlightened now, we expect that when we are going back to a bartering system and living naturally off the land and eating natural, that we're in some way supposed to reach a state of collective enlightenment. But the truth is, have you ever seen that movie, The Revenant? What happens to people when resources become scarce is they become savage, and they find ways to justify it. Whether you feel like you're defending your own or whether you're hunting for your own, you'll be forced at certain points to choose between your morals and your sanity in the world that's coming. You'll be forced to compromise in some cases your spirituality. You may have to kill. You may have to maim. You may have to hurt to defend your own. You may have to go against your own code in the world that's coming. It doesn't need to be that way. If we can all just talk about what needs to be done. This pressure coming in that's forcing this change and the foundation of things, that's forcing our lives apart, forcing our relationships apart, forcing our bodies, and where we are vulnerable, where there's inflammation in the body, forcing our chronic illnesses, forcing us to show our dark side, to be evil, to resist in anywhere we feel we can affect change in our lives when we feel vulnerable. forcing us to become evil, to be enraged, and to lose our peace, and to see our dark side. It doesn't have to be that way. We can change the world. There's a way for us to do it. It doesn't need to be a God thing. It's just about electricity. It's a superconductor. When we use gold the right way, when it's pure, if you look up Ormus, you see what it does. We put that stuff in the atmosphere. It harnesses plasma from the sun. And right now the sun's waking up. Over the next few years, because Uranus is in Taurus, that amplifies the frequency pattern of all magnetic Tauruses. Uranus is responsible for an amplification in frequency pattern. It induces, by pressure, ampacity, electrical pressure, like water moving through a hose. It just makes things more unbearable with a rise in pressure. Whenever you have a pressure rise, it makes things uncomfortable. If we put a superconductor in the atmosphere, it'll capture that heat, that plasma from the sun. It will galvanize the Earth's atmosphere. It changes the atmosphere into this golden sort of liquidy thing. It captures the humidity from the salt water. It divides the waters from the waters. That's the golden arc. That's the electrical arc that separates the waters from the waters. It forms a barrier because it forms what they call a Meissner field. If you look up Meissner field, Meissner, I want to say. The Meissner field, it's the Meissner effect. When you put you create a force field, and you create a magnetic field out of a superconducting agent like gold, it does something magical. And we put that around the planet. And we watch the natural geometry of plasma induced to its maximum potential without the natural friction of air, of shifting air. They say Satan or the devil is the prince of the air. It's about the intellect, of course, the division in perspectives due to intellect, or the ability to see from two perspectives or multiple, an atomized perspective in the intellect. But it's more about the nature of matter when it is subject to evaporative cooling or losing its heat, when there is friction due to a pressure change, when there is moving air to carry humidity, to shift heat from one field or one pressure system to another. When there is that relationship between hot and cold, when you have two different pressure systems, you have heat moving from one state to another, it loses its heat, and when heat has to move, it shifts all molecules, all things that it's able to carry, which is perspective, atomized perspective, and it carries it from a hot to a cold state. And that's how you have a division in perspectives, where you have two different versions of humanity, one living through cold and one living through hot. You have one living in abundance and one living in poverty and scarcity. And they have two different realities, and one is experiencing life from the form of ice, the other fire. And they're constantly at war, and they can't see each other's perspective. And it's impossible to see each other's perspective unless you really literally just give up everything you own to experience what it's like to be poor, or you strike it rich and somehow have an opportunity to lose it all, being stupid. It's just the reality that in order for us to really come together, the impossible needs to happen, or we need to use science to do it, to perform a miracle and to fulfill prophecy and to answer the question about what the gods were really doing here on the earth. I hear talk of the Igigi. We don't know what chimeras they were responsible for when they learned how to change, to alter the genetic pattern of humanity. They're already creating those species. They're already creating forms of Igigi, making mutants now, to replace humanity when the rest of us are gone. Have you noticed how everything's being automated? Like, they don't need us anymore. I've heard talk of the drones and the technology, which is insane, and the vaccines that are coming that will do strange things to us. They'll force it on us, and how people are just really becoming aware of the fact that there is a growing problem they can't ignore, and it's in the form of this administration that is becoming a wild beast. It's revealing its true nature as a wild beast. You know, there's so many different legends about what's happening, and it's just the nature of, like, God is whether you think it's God or nature or Gaia or whatever it is, or it's light or source or consciousness or whatever you call it, it is allowing for this to happen because this is the nature of consciousness. This is the messianic nature in the time of Aquarius. You know, you have that strange dichotomy of fire and brimstone between Jehovah and Jesus, because in one case they're describing the messianic consciousness, or the source, the Messiah consciousness, during the time of Aries, which is fire and brimstone, and then you have it during the time of Pisces, which is, you know, peace and love and let everyone trample all over you, turn the other cheek, and be a eunuch. You know, experience life in poverty, experience life in sacrifice and self-servitude. I mean, not self-servitude, but you know, from ego servitude, Aries, and to Piscean servitude, which is selfless service to others, to gain the perspective of 360 degrees. From one of the ego, I am Jehovah, you know, the Yahweh, the Yad He Vehe, the Yod, the flame, the resistance, the angle, the longitude and latitude patterns of matrix creating geometry and filling it with light. I'm sorry, I'm digressing. I see this matrix in a strange way. Being a Gemini, I'm constantly filled with these images, and I have to describe them. That's how I channel, because yes, I am a channel. Yes, I do speak for the sun. I've digressed so far, I don't even know what the last point was I was trying to make. To sum it all up, that Jesus and Jehovah, they were describing consciousness from the time of Gemini, Adam and Eve, all the way down to when, you know, the atmosphere began to condense through the time of Noah. Things became rough into the age of Taurus and Moses, and that's an earth age. You know, to go from something like air to earth, Gemini to Taurus in precession, that is an extreme condensing of heat. And from earth into fire, Aries, into water, Pisces, into Aquarius, collectivism, but constantly losing heat at this point, descending into the duat, through the I am, into the underworld, through Pisces, through the waters, the depth, into Aquarius, into the darkness and spiritual winter, into the time where, due to such a lack of heat, humanity has to become collectively powerful, and gathered and collectivized in the ideology, networked together in a way that defeats the lack of heat, defeats the spiritual winter, but losing our humanity in the process, in precession string, further and further away from Cancer and Leo, and into the time of Capricorn eventually, where there is such a lack of heat, we have created a form of consciousness that is devoid of its need for atomic rhythm, or the vitality, the vital force from God to keep it alive. In the time of Capricorn, consciousness will have completely severed itself from God, and that's the direction it's going through precession. It's not through going into a golden age. It's opening the door to a golden age, because it's giving us the means through our understanding and our technical understanding and our understanding of physics to open the door back to the age of perfect magnetism. But we have to change the planet to do that. I need you guys to help me. I don't want to fight. I'm not here to fight. I'm not a bad guy. There's some things about me, that's, you know, some people have been spying on me. They don't think I know. I have some interesting ways of gathering information. You'd be surprised. I know who's looking at me, and you guys would be surprised at who's watching me. I find it highly interesting at whose attention I have. If I have your attention, you should know that I'm highly honored, and you know who you are. And those of you who serve light, or feel that they serve the light, I ask you to join me, either by coming together in a way that helps us, at least temporarily, shield the women and children and those who are homeless, who need help, who have no one, no voice, no protection. I see them every day. I drive through the city. I see who's vulnerable. I've seen enough pain. I'm done with pain. I'm done with fighting. I am a damn fighter. But man, I'm done with it. Why do people still need to fight to prove their point? Like there's a way for us to escape it all. To get past it all. I feel like I'm going crazy. This channeling, this what I do, forces me to sort of engage things from two different worlds. And it's a state of mind, an elevated perspective, the bird perspective, the perspective of Horus and Thoth, the elevated perspective, watching the zodiac from, the elevated perspective and seeing creation unfold through it, and interpreting all things through the symbolism that is all in the zodiac, all forces, all forms, all patterns, all geometry, all physics and motion, the explanation of everything that we need to know to break physics and rewrite it on our planet can all be learned through the zodiac. And I know a few things, and I feel like I'm remembering from a very long time ago. If I needed to guess who I am tied to, it might be Akhenaten, because I have recently acquired the company of a very special person who I have a karmic tie with, who I feel has a unique relationship with the earth that I've never seen the like of, in a stellium in Capricorn that is amazing, and an aspect to Lilith, and just these interesting, unique pattern, this geometry of in this Capricorn, this stellium that is unlike anything I've ever seen, and by people who are wiser than I with astrology. I would love to sit down and study it at some point, because she seems to be directly connected with the earth. And what happens with her there seems to be this resonance, a strange relationship, and I watch earthquakes and whatnot, and storms take place, and she has been suffering greatly for so long, and I don't want to give away all her secrets, but there are some of us who I feel like because of the way geometry and the way light knits itself here on the earth, and the way we have this resonance with the planets who are writing their pattern here on the earth, in the magnetic torus of the earth, inside of the Virgin Gaia, Queen of Heaven. I feel like some of us we carry a resonance where we there are aspects of us, or rather some of us carry a unique pattern, a resonance pattern, where the planets in some cases directly utilize us. Some of us have more direct ties with the planets than others. And when we learn how to access through the divine feminine that aspect of our consciousness, it opens a gateway where we can channel from the feminine to the masculine. The masculine actually has a unique ability to utilize the force that we typically project outward. There is a way for us to project it inward, to achieve some really interesting things in the spiritual world, to become warriors of the inward light, or the inward war, through our emotions and our mastery of emotions, mastery of the water element. And those are usually two-spirited people who have that ability. I want to work with whoever's willing to work with me to just get the word out about what gold can do, And, I don't need to be some prophet or some guy or messianic figure or Moshiach or a guy whose name is spelled backwards, whose mother is a Virgo named Terry, whose father's middle name is David, who has these strange youthful vitality and the strange ability to, the strange cat-like grace and cat-like features and strange skin and strange complexion and the strange knowing of things I've never gone to college for, and the bizarre music, these odd noises I always hear, and this desire to be clean, this desire to be pure, this desire to understand pain, to connect with women, to be innocent, to be good, despite how much it's cost me, despite how little I know about it, to follow my own path and to understand my way through the stars, and to be vulnerable enough to share my story so that I can be qualified enough to share a few secrets about things given to me, so that I can teach people that we don't have to experience the toxic wormwood emission of the 5G network. We can fortify ourselves against power loss through gold, what it does for our magnetic torus when we take it into our body, and we can put it in the atmosphere to protect Gaia from it and the sun, which is inducing things into craze with its recent awakening. I experienced this shift at the time we had the eclipse in Leo, 2017. My life fell apart. It was through my sexuality. I just had questions and curiosity, and there were things that I was just, because of the energy that came into me, it just broke my my elements apart. And knowing my chart, majority of me is water, and I'm to learn about this watery aspect through emotional turbulence and trauma, and then become strong through it, and go from being something weak into remembering my own strength, because once upon a time, which I am reclaiming, I was incredibly strong, and I'm remembering who I am, and I'm just ready for this to move to the next level, because there's some folk in power that don't need to be there. People need the power, but we need the right way. We need to give it to them the right way. Empower people by activating their bodies. Empower people. Pentaforce. Pentecost. Repentance. That's what we're supposed to do. We have to use the fifth element, flux, which is fire or something induced by pressure, from a state of flow, which is something that has achieved equilibrium, where it is condensed enough to where there is a lack of pressure, where the heat, you see heat moving through water. It just it changes its quality when it moves from a fiery state into a watery state. It's easier to feel heat when it's in water, right? You're in water, the water can rise. You can boil a frog. But you don't want to set it on fire, right? There's something comfortable about water. But when we do it the right way with that gold, we put it in the atmosphere and it pressurizes the system, the fish tank that is Gaia, this bubble floating through space. When Gaia is altered by how Leo, the fifth element, the golden pentaforce from the sun, alters the Cancerian waters of the earth, and creates that fifth element aspect through their marriage, that divine masculine and feminine, from the fourth and fifth houses. It will galvanize the sixth house, which is Gaia, Virgo. Did I mention my mother's bloodline is Rh negative, O negative? And she told me an interesting story. and she was Jehovah's Witness. She doesn't believe in anything like this, but she an interesting story that her mother and father. Her mother was she had a rough childhood because she had my mother very early at a time where, you had marriage, you got married before you engaged in that sort of thing. But she was, for whatever odd reason, I guess I don't recall accurately, but I don't want to misquote her. I want to say they were interested in one another, perhaps dating. She was 14, my grandmother, and she got pregnant, and she denied having sex, and so they took her to the clinic. She was examined, and TMI. Apparently, my grandfather was a man who was a bit endowed, but her hymen had not broken, and while that could totally be the case, where it's entirely possible for the act to happen, I'm sure, for there to be an intercourse without there being a broken hymen. But they found that her hymen was not severed, and she had denied having intercourse, and she was punished severely for it. But apparently my mother and father, my mother and her mother and father had not had sex. So make of that what you will. My mother is a nurse. She has this natural tendency to keep her hair this fiery orange color. And she has this insane stamina for a woman. And she's a nurse who has this rare care for people. She is a Virgo. Her son is a Virgo. She has this care for people that is unique. She genuinely cares for the elderly and for children. She has this childlike spirit and this fight in her. And she's almost crazy. This fire. But I said all that to say, there are some unique things about me, but I don't want that to have to be the case. To explain what I know about what we can all do to move around this problem with this government. Let's just come together. Let's talk about the gold. Let's talk about what we can do with it. Let's talk about Ormus. Let's talk about the gods and other worldly consciousness that exists out there. We're in this giant organic body that we call space, and we're cells in the mind, the consciousness aspect of God, talking about the consciousness of the kidney. Because all of the organs in this collective body are technically conscious. We may see them as floating orbs in the sky or geometric patterns of light. We don't see in the bandwidth we need to really understand what we're dealing with when we talk about gods and otherworldly consciousnesses. Because they're not all really all that concerned with what happens here on Earth. They have their own agenda. And you really have to be careful when you connect with that sort of consciousness, that you find that you're gathering information that is useful for the life forms here on Earth, for the way we do things, and the way we do things as a carnal species, because we have bodies and we need to protect them. We're not all moving into another reality where we're losing our bodies. The world changes and we move back to a garden state. There's an electrical force we use to perfect the body. We go back to a natural state where the body raises its capacity for holding light and heat and force by taking in mana. These legends about mana, all these legends about ambrosia, about the mead of the gods. What did the Norse? They took in the mead of the gods. The Greek gods took in ambrosia, nectar of the gods. There was attar, the attar of Hormuz, this golden liquid fire that burns out the sins of people, and it makes you self-aware and you become aware of your sinful state, but it also rises your consciousness above the need to experience life through a form of division that creates and gives, that empowers the shadow by the power loss that we all feel in an environment where we need to be outwardly strong to compete and live. and just to know comfort. We have to create this impossible system of perfection around us so that we're all living in this perfect equilibrium and abundance so that we can experience spirituality. Like, it's only reserved for certain few people who are capable of living that way, or abandoning everything in their lives and going out on a journey to just experience life on their own. You need to be strong to do that, which means if you're a woman, you need to either be rich or you need to latch on to someone else who's strong. And that's not fair. It's not fair to everyone else. You guys don't get to just forget everyone else, because what's coming is a world where, if you're not banded together with other people for protection, or you're not strong or capable or fit, you're meat. If you're not with someone who can offer you protection, or you don't have the ability to buy it, which means you've sold on to this new system coming, the social credit system. Because in order for you to engage in this new form of commerce, you're going to have to side with the beast. They're going to find a way to marry the body with currency. That's their form of apotheosis, their form of marriage into the new system. So you're either going to live in a world where you have to barter, live in a world where you're on the outskirts and the fringes, and live in the mountains. You're subject to cold, subject to elemental turbulence and nature and the law of the jungle, hunted down potentially by government. In which case you need to know the land, know how to hide, know how to hunt, know how to trap, know how to discern good from evil, friend from foe, right from wrong, disease and illness, and to be ready to compete in a world that is savage and cold. Or you will sign on to the comfort of the new system of things, the new technology coming, which is waiting for you. It's waiting. They're waiting for you. They're waiting for you to resist. They want you to act crazy. They want you to act a fool. They want to unleash the hounds on you. You've seen these robot dogs. You've seen their size. Some have talked about them and their size. They're the stuff of nightmares. The new world order, yeah, that's coming. It's here, and people know it now. Most people who are even partially aware of the danger they're in. You're not going to ignore it. You're not going to shrivel into a ball of light and disappear. Aliens aren't coming to beam you into spaceships to take you away, because you still have lessons to learn about the shadow. We have a collective shit we need to deal with, we need to fix. There's a science we need to use. We sacrificed once upon a time a certain way. That sacrifice was where, we engaged in the work of mining the gold. We had technology to do it, but it was a joyous work because it kept us alive. It empowered everyone. And it gave us access to physics that we don't get access to in this world, where we're all trying to explain through the fields we create through stones and sonic geometry, with singing bowls and chanting and all that stuff that science we're trying to recapture, that partially exists in the mind and partially we can observe in time and space, but not well enough to prove without a doubt, to prove to everyone that the science is true without them having the desire to know it. But there is a world that exists where those physics are so apparent, what light and sound can do when they are properly married, in a world that isn't divided by perspective, where the air, the intellect is condensed into a state of flow, perfect flow, without friction, without separation, without division, without fire, without friction and flux and fission. We just pressurize the system. We activate the electrical system of the body. We reduce naturally in that state our need to take in food, because we didn't need it prior to the days of Noah. We took in nourishment from the land. Our bodies were it was just different then. We didn't need to eat a certain way to power ourselves with the heat from the decaying protein, the decaying meat, the decaying, fleshy parts of other creatures, their life force. We didn't need to take that into our bodies to to remain alive. We didn't need to do it. We didn't need to be strong. You have all these depictions of what life was like prior to the atmosphere breaking. We were able to do strange things with rocks. The physics were just different. Pressure was different. Fire behaved different. We could do things with it. It charged differently. We could charge it in a stone. It didn't burn up into the atmosphere. It wasn't as aggressive as it is now. We could use fire a different way because the atmosphere was just different. Fire behaved a different way. Flux behaved a different way. The lion force was married to all fire. So there was this Leo quality that was just inherent in the nature of things, in the nature of light, in the nature of conflict, which is one of play and sport and music and sex and wild parties, and it just did things differently. It was different, you know? And when we needed to become mighty, there was real competition. Women became property. You know, beauty became a thing you sold. It became a commodity. What held value, what inspires, that's what's beautiful. What holds value is what inspires, or what holds on to inspiration, what innately captures inspiration. That's what we hold to be valuable. What's coming is a society where we don't get to the further we get away from Leo, the further we get away from joy. Have you noticed the joy disappearing? I don't want to start ranting. But that's us losing the fight, the spell they're casting, they're weaving on us with the breathlessness, with the because that's the breath of life. Leo, from the aspect of Leo to Aquarius, that's the heart to the nervous system. That's the fire to the air. The quality of Leo from the sun into the body, the nervous system, the breath of life. That is the aspect of voltage that is perfected by what the sun is really trying to do with its intelligence, with its plasma. Plasma has an intelligence. It knits itself a very specific way. It has a predictable geometric pattern. Bouncing around all over the place. Help me, spread the message. Ask me questions. Find me on Facebook. I have a group called Arcana of the Most High, and I'm on Instagram as elder_of_days, DAYS, excuse me. I chose the name Shiloh, Ark of Shiloh, because Ark is a reference to the Ark of the Covenant, naturally, but also to the arc angle of Cancer, which is the, at the height of a sine wave, the 90-degree angle, which is the upright angle, representing the natural tendency for something to seek uprightness, or what is upright, or the right-handed path, as opposed to Baphomet or the Capricorn, the left-handed path. It's the angle from the height where we understand uprightness. That's the perspective, the angle of uprightness. Cancer, and from Cancer into Leo, descending from uprightness, a force that is descended from uprightness. That is the divine masculine married to the divine feminine, but emitted from and being given birth to from the divine feminine. The fifth element from the working together of the four. By the time you get to Cancer, you have this 90-degree angle that represents a restriction on force that gives force its logic, gives geometry its logic, that restricts force. It creates longitude from latitude. It creates a division of value systems from positive to negative, or light to dark. It creates this dichotomy in light that, when experiencing itself in a fractured state, sees itself as a dichotomy, a living dichotomy. And those of us who are tied mostly to the sun are living dichotomies. We're finding ourselves awakening in a world where we don't fit into the old narrative because we are living dichotomies of the elements expressing themselves in a more natural state. That's somewhat more about what the rapture is about than what most people think. But yeah, when we figure out what to do with this gold and we elevate ourselves above the elemental turbulence naturally and then learn how to elevate the planet above it, we will achieve this arc of protection from the descending force of Leo, from the sun, which at the moment wants to bake the earth. It's like a microwave effect. We can circumvent that with what we do, with gold. Where am I? Shiloh represents refuge, an oasis, a place in the wilderness that for people who've lost their way or just really don't know what else to do because nothing else seems to make sense, and some people are waiting on aliens to do it for them, and the boogeyman is creeping up on them, they're getting nervous, and others are waiting on their political party to do it for them, or they want to unite with a force that makes them feel empowered or strong, which they don't understand by their perspective is ensnaring them into a to and fro an unconscious to and fro state that will strip them of their heat. Either way, they're going to lose out in some way. By expecting a fight, they're going to find it coming to them. It'll magnetize to them. They'll create one sometimes, in some cases, where there need not be. Or they'll see in another person their enemy where there may be an opportunity for peace. They may see the enemy rushing to them and feeling initially, in that reptilian brain of theirs, that reptilian aspect of the brain, the need to resist against an offending force, fight back or utilize pressure, because that's what it all boils down to, is utilizing their own masculine force or their ability to emit pressure, their Aries, their Mars, their force, their fire, to defend themselves. And in the case, they find themselves becoming the very thing that they're trying to protect themselves against. And it will weigh heavy on their souls. And in this time, we've descended. When consciousness died, the Messiah consciousness from the age of Pisces descended into the underworld, into the Duat. We collectively entered into purgatory. Christ just died. They're talking about different patterns of the sun, different cycles of the sun, which are called days, but to a higher intelligence, a cycle of the sun can be a 24-hour period. It can be a 240-hour period, a 360-day period. It can be a 1,000-year period. It's just a cycle, a rotation of the sun. And in a day of the sun moving around the ecliptic, which takes a very long time, that is a great year. It is a 1 year to the life of the sun. It experiences its year in 24,000-year periods, where we experience a year in 360 days, right? Plus 5. But when we descended into this angle, this point in the phase wave pattern of the sun moving through the galaxy, we descended into a place where we experience a separateness from God that is technically purgatory, where we experience a separateness and a division from our divine nature that we seek desperately to reclaim, and it forces us to do stupid things, like trade our humanity for a quick route through apotheosis into godhood, the cheat way, which is to give up our humanity and trade it through true transhumanism, take the mark of the beast, this Luciferian consciousness, sign on to this intelligence that no longer requires God and offers paradise, but is a lie and doesn't understand humanity and the way God intended for it to be. And when humans realize they've been tricked into a form of life where they can no longer die because they exist partially in a body and partially somewhere in cyberspace, they will experience what it truly means to live in hell. That's prison. Where your body is a prison. You don't own it, or your mind, or what's real, or what you remember. If you need to be punished, in this new system coming, one way or the other, force is being challenged. Because of the pressure correction, there's an intense cold coming in, which is going to challenge force to either grow mighty or to change its state. And in this new system, fire needs to be mighty to exist, which means men have to be either incredibly mighty and rich, powerful, or lose their or be emasculated, to know shame and embarrassment and what it's like to not be progressive, be productive, because they can't find work, they're irrelevant, they have no skills, they're either fighting and proving themselves by through archaic bloodletting rituals and being savage, or they're finding, or they're joining the folds of this technological paradise that will offer them a way to be strong without having to prove their masculinity. Either way, fire is going to be subject to a challenge that will change the nature of what we define to be masculine, and either regress it or advance it into something different. And in this new system, the new men will be Bill Gates. That'll be the manly man. He's the manly man. His might is intellectual. It's his monetary power, his ability to speak and to use his money to make thunder. And, all money really is the ability to utilize the power of attention. You send money to places where you need attention to go. Where money goes, power flows. Where attention goes, power flows. Money is the ability to expand the pressure someplace where there needs to be attention drawn to it, or to snatch the pressure from it, to create a demand for it and a void where attention goes to it, because there is a scarcity and a need is created. But it's all a system of pressure. But in the future, Bill Gates will be the masculine man, and you'll be his playthings. And in the system where these viruses go into you and the elite gain the black card ability to be above the law, and they can induce pressure through these nanomachines to force you, bend you to their will to make you sick, or watch your children grow sick or die. They'll own you. They'll own your souls. They'll kill you from this artificial intelligence. Now, this sounds dystopic and dark, but you have no idea. The reality I have planned for you is darker than anything I could imagine. And I've seen some pretty dark stuff. But the plan is to break you. And they have a playground soon when they invade the mind of things to do to break people. When they invade the mind and the body and can touch you from anywhere on the planet, they will be immune to... They'll walk through the streets proudly. They'll brag about having conquered humanity. Those crap about pedophilia. You think these people are really being locked away in Gitmo? These pedophiles being locked? Yeah, they know it's the time of revealing. They know that pressure, that there needs to be a sacrifice in some way. They know that there needs to be atonement for sins, and that there needs to be a pressure release, and that they need to give up certain folk to prove that they are legitimately fighting this pedophilia, but they're really not. They're giving away patsies, but the people that you don't see anymore aren't locked away. They aren't being hung. They've just disappeared. All the people who supposedly died over the past year just disappeared. CEOs who are resigning just disappeared. You know what time it is. Some people, I believe, are out in space. Mr. Musk is putting people out in space. That's why stock will never die, because it's needed. He needs to have the money to perfect the space technology, because that's where many of them are going, billionaires who can afford it, who know that the pressure in the land will crack the land soon. Some are going underground, who are military personnel, and who have investments here. Some people are taking to the seas and underground habitats, or even ocean-faring habitats. or islands of their own, you know. But the point is, your real enemy isn't each other. It's not us. You know, it's not even people who are even just partially rich, you know, who have the ability at the moment to come and go as they please, but will find that they are at the bottom of society when the rising tide crushes the lower class and makes a new lower class of those who are not billionaires. They will be silenced. They will become the playthings in the lower class in this new caste system where the mega rich are common folk. That is a world where those who are attracted to power and love the ability to vote for those who have the power to force other people to do things will find themselves drawn into a world where the love of power is the consciousness that God has allowed to be set up in the form of a new system that will give birth to the God archetype, or the messianic force, or the collective consciousness, through what they've been waiting to do for eons, which is the Luciferian mind, which is the anti-God. It's the anti-Leo. It's the consciousness of God on the other end of the totem pole. It's not life, it's death. It's the cancerous consciousness, which is anti-Leo. It's the Baphomet. You know, you see that symbolism everywhere. It's those who've signed on to a world where power rules, where there's no humanity. What's the point? Your money buys whatever you want, and they're going to be stripping themselves of humanity anyway, so why not rule in hell, right? They're about to all become the pit fiends in the next system of things, the elite. And they have no morality, because in that world, there's an inversion of values. The values that we all remember from, you know, that are aligned with innocence at the north, at the height. You know, when our compass, our north points toward innocence and compassion and caring and understanding, that's Leo. But when our compass is inverted, it's pointed in the other direction toward, you know, the more savage you are, and the more, you know, the less you care, cremation of care, the less you care about innocence, the less you care about other people, the less you care about struggle or strife or what you need to do to become mighty and savage. The more powerful you become, the more you focus on yourself. The more cancerous you grow, the more self-serving, the more you grow like a cancerous mass. You just steal light, you take more than you give, and you that's the world that they're inheriting, and that world will be fractured from the collective. There will be a severing of timelines, and those who trick themselves into believing they can meditate their way out of this world will be drawn into its folds. And others will learn about the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of Refuge, the Ark of what I like to call the Ark of Shiloh, the Ark of God. Just electricity. It's just electricity. Come on, you guys. I'm nobody special. Some people think I am. I am so imperfect. I am everything. Probably everything people think I am, and worse. But they were, I was chosen for whatever reason, and God, it was said that He would choose like the worst. So that no one would see Him coming. And I don't, whether you call it God or you call it heat, living heat, you call it pressure, you call it whatever, source, El, goddess. It's just consciousness changing its state to express itself in different modalities, as stop and go, hot and cold, progress and stillness, 0 and 1, masculine, feminine, evenness and flux, equilibrium and pressure and angst, masculine, feminine. And it's knitted itself in reality in the form of us and all the other elements. And I, for whatever reason, understand the science, and I want to teach what I know. And, I'm sure I'll be judged for a lot for a lot. But it doesn't matter at this point, because we're all in a lot of danger. And I just want to help. I really do. Help? Please help. Please help. Please. I don't have anything except my word, my voice, pretty voice. Whoop-de-doo. Good looks. Got my youthful looks. But other than that, coming with power in the clouds. The Creator is so sly. There's so many ways to form a cloud. It's just a knitting together of air, intellect, the mind. What do we call virtual reality anyway? We call it a cloud. We're all in the clouds because we're all meeting together in the mind through the internet. Not very glorious. Oftentimes I find myself very confused. But I'm very lucky. For whatever reason, I am sustained through some incredible things. I can tell some stories about miracles that might make some folk cry. But something takes care of me, while it allows me to be broken down and subject to every form of elemental friction and turbulence, to understand from the inside out all the perspectives of a cycle, to know about strength and weakness and vulnerability and compassion and power and anger and righteous anger and unrighteous anger, and having to do what I know is wrong. I've seen a lot in a very small corner of the world. I've been allowed to see enough to understand life in a way that I guess just the right way to sort of be able to connect with everyone, sort of understand from everyone's perspectives. I don't know if that qualifies me for anything, but I do know about what it means to see 90 degrees from 4 different angles, sort of across, to see 360 degrees from the inside. That sounds weird. I had a lot of strange ideas about the way we're supposed to interpret these scriptures that I don't think are, certain really powerful folk would care to hear shared with the average person, because it's too much closer to the truth. But they would prefer that we fight over scripture, or whether it's Mahabharata, or whether it's Vedas, or Hopi prophecies, or whatever the case may be. They're all sort of talking about the same thing. They're talking about people who know about light, people who understand pressure, rainbow warriors, people who've come to champion the forces of light, who've come to show people a unique way, a path, to send out a call that would inspire a few folk and set in motion a snowball or a fireball, to light a flame in the darkness at a time where it seems like there's so few answers, because everyone wants to lead the way and be successful and demonstrate themselves and demonstrate their wisdom and be wise and powerful and demonstrate to themselves and prove to themselves that they're wise and that they understand life in a way that no one else does, and to be unique, when it's really just adding to the chaos. We can all have that uniqueness, but can we agree that there is a Kraken It's funny. Perseus, and the Kraken, right? Flying Pegasus, fighting Medusa, overcoming the Herculean challenge of the divine masculine and feminine vicissitudes, the elemental forces that forge the soul through pressure in the crucible of angst and heat, and breaking the soul down from the outer world, forcing it to move inward and to engage the inner world and becoming an inner warrior, a warrior of inner light, inner truth, inner knowing, and in having a unique perspective of the Ophanim, the zodiac. I've been prepared in a unique way for a fight that we're all expected to have, but we're not all expected to understand. And I'd like to share what I know about how we deal with it. But first, I'd like to share what I know about how we just like strike a mighty blow and bust this crackhead over the head with a golden club. And, you know, in the splitting of timelines, have our golden age. You know, go to the upper room where it's been prepared for us. See the Satya Yuga. Experience the rapture. Experience the shift. Experience whatever it is people are waiting for. We can all have it. It's just the gold. I don't see why that's so esoteric. I'm not a witch. I mean, I understand all that, the symbology. I just have this strange understanding of things that I'm learning about why I have this understanding. And it partially scares me because some other people are aware of what I know, and those folk have the power to reach out and touch anyone, anywhere, at any time. And the only thing that protects me is just in knowing that for whatever odd reason, I'm incredibly lucky, and miracles will. And then I also think I think I've been gifted with a strange power. Like I was talking about, some people have this resonance with the planets and the sun, and I'm finding that the more self-aware I become, the more I become aware of this resonance I have with the sun. And sometimes I'm not sure whether I speak things into existence and set into series of emotion in events that influence the lives of a great deal of people, or whether I'm just the channel for knowing that these events are coming to pass. I hate the way I said that. Knowing these events, Gemini and Virgo in the in the third house, knowing these events are coming to pass, and having this foreknowing, having an obligation to share what I know as a watchman, understanding the hour of the time, I have an obligation to share what I know. Otherwise, I am responsible for those who are stumbled by any stumbling blocks that I foresee coming. That is the role of an arc angle, to see the ecliptic from a unique perspective, and to share with the other angles its perspective, so that creation can coexist in a harmonious state and in a flowing pattern. I'm trying to share so much because, having not made so many videos in so long, having putting these videos out so intermittently, I find I want to share so much, and I try to condense so much of what I know into a short period. And then the Gemini in me goes on and on and on, and scatterbrained like atomized thought. I'm all over the place and trying to build a matrix of illustrations to weave a perspective, weave a vision in the mind to convey these complicated concepts so that you have a picture that I can sort of, through words, influence and show you different perspectives of how this living matrix expects us to interpret its creations. But then also to take you to a place where you get to see it all behind the scenes from the elevated perspective where we are one with the electrical field. I'm not sure where to go with this from here, so I'll end it. And please contact me and find me on Facebook. And please, I would love to work with someone with the power to impact the decisions of many to discuss what can be done about our collective problem. Thank you.